resume episode 34, Augman Out. Wait, this is by Ian Flynn too? I thought there'd be only one Flynn episode. This ought to be interesting. I have to admit, I'm excited when I see he wrote an episode, but not for the reason you'd expect. Eggman complains that he's been drilling all day for mecha suits, and lampshades how so many have shown up in the show and he can't even find one. And Orbot asks him why he can't build one himself. See, this is good self-aware writing. But Eggman says that then he would have to build it instead of someone else digging. Makes sense that he's lazy. Sonic then conveniently finds Eggman. Why do the heroes keep finding where Eggman is and what he's doing? Why don't they have spy bots? I'm so sick of this with the show. I thought it would only be a problem in AOSCH. But there's a forced joke where he tells the robots to show how harmless they are, and they inexplicably show flowers to them when Eggman should hate flowers. And then the heroes attack some Mantis robots. What's the point? They're all the same regardless of their changed appearance. Tails uses an Ender Beam as a lasso. Meh. It may look fantastic to see Tails using something that looks like golden lightning, but I would like to see Styx use a lasso instead. They all kill the robots, I don't care. This was the least interesting action scene yet. Sonic gets scared, and then spin dashes off the arm of a giant robot in one hit. Cubot says a pun that he's been disarmed instead of being upset that Eggman lost. Though it'd be annoying if Orbot and Cubot bitched about Eggman's losses. But that's logically how they would have been programmed. Then we see a green gas, and Dave panics about being ransacked with horrible voice and acting. I'm never gonna understand why that green gas showed up, by the way. I thought it would be foreshadowing the fact that Eggman's drilling machine caused pollution that seriously affected the island. Like in that one episode of Sad AM with the green water. But no. Dave says animals won't eat this stuff. And Amy finds some footprints. And Styx sniffs and follows them to some guy 6 hours too late. He complains that some bandages were stolen from him. What's the point of Styx being written to sniff these footprints if they're clearly visible anyways? And it turns out it was written that way for the sake of wasting her time with a joke, as she actually says that the sniffing was just for effect, and she really did just follow the footprints. So the writing was aware of this pointlessness, and wrote it anyways. Logically, why would she just sniff for show? I'm sure she's proud of her No, why would she be proud of her reputation? Everyone thinks of her as just a paranoid kook. You know, I would have preferred if it was not for show, because it would be useful of her to have a very heightened sense of smell. They go to Amy's house after saying the thief loves mad burgers, and Amy sees that her couch has been slimed. Then they find one of the monsters Styx used to hide in her basement, a troglodyte, in Sonic's shower. Figures he's not like those other guys. He's the only one with clothes like that. I'm willing to bet we never saw this guy's model in the last episode with these characters in it. So it's a continuity error caused by a retcon. But he still stole from people, and started a fire in Amy's living room. He says that he ditched the people because he never fit in with the Conformists. I mean, it does make a lot of sense that in a huge group of people, there would be a guy like this somewhere. Then he stupidly tells the army commander that violence isn't the answer to his face in a flashback, and gets hit with the tongue and thrown to the wall. Then we're somehow expected to believe that there's no meat in mad burgers, only shredded newspaper and toothpaste or something, which somehow doesn't kill them. This is such a forced joke. Obviously it would be obvious just from looking at it that it has that in it. And he would go to business, and people would taste it. He could have said tofu, but no. That makes sense. We can't have a joke that makes sense. The show really goes overboard. It would have felt cool if it was lampshaded, and we were told that they actually get nutrition out of it because they're that kind of magical being. That would help world build, but instead it's just a plot hole. Then for some reason there was a hole in the wall and he escaped. Wait, what? Did I miss something? All he said is that a miracle happened. Well, that makes the entire plot forced. I love that Styx says that she knows what it's like to be surrounded by Conformists. The hippie says that he stole a bandage because he got cut, fortunately justifying his stealing. And Styx, the paranoid kook, somehow says that he can stay at her house, perfectly fine. Already she trusts him, probably because she sees him as a kindred spirit. But Sonic is suspicious of him and says he wants to keep an eye on him. The hippie unrealistically plays the flute right when Sonic clearly wants to sleep, and right after he told him off. Instead of just going to another room, he starts saying annoying things, and then is annoying some more. And so Sonic with bloodshot eyes tells Tails that he's his problem now. Even though Tails is supposed to be his best friend, you'd think he would be the last person he would dump this guy on. Actually, that's an out-of-character moment. Tails is asked why he can't adjust things manually, and then he's told that technology will destroy them all, using the ancients as an example. I love how angry he sounded when he said, "What? It's just a can opener!" Somehow he almost dies from it. I refuse to believe he'd be this annoying to Sonic by accident. And that Tails didn't immediately tell him that medical technology is worth it, for example. The hippie asks Knuckles why he's punching the coconut tree, and he's asked if the tree owes him money. Well, that was a clever quip for once. Knuckles is told to just be patient and get the coconut nature's way, and I'm expected to believe that he doesn't just climb the goddamn tree. This is Knuckles we're talking about. Instead, he wastes an entire day and night, and then the coconuts fall when he's gone. And somehow it's a huge amount of coconuts at once, which I'm pretty sure is unrealistic. I like how mad he got at him, but all he did was say he wasted his whole day. That's it. I miss the cathartic rage of X-Knuckles. That's how bad Boom Knuckles is. I actually miss X-Knuckles. Why did a writer who's obsessed with the games forget that Knuckles can climb? That was his whole appeal when he was first playable. And why in the holy fuck did the rest of the Froglobites escape? How did they invade the village? Is a drilling machine that user-friendly that any random person could use it this well? To drill upwards when it's meant to drill downwards and that's it? Wouldn't there just be a bunch of buttons and they wouldn't know what to press? Oh, Og is the hippie's name. Amy somehow blames Sonic for this, and then it turns out Knuckles had sent Og to Styx's house, and Sonic says that Og was a spy all along and must have opened the door to his cave. But the door was still closed and locked off, instead of him being an inexplicable traitor. Because fuck the simple writing that would have made the plot make sense and explained how these guys escaped. We have to be convoluted. And Styx says that paranoid allegations are her shtick. She's not supposed to be that self-aware, she's schizophrenic. If she thinks she has paranoid allegations in the first place, then after the Froglobites attack the village, they somehow don't immediately interrupt the hippie when he tells them off, and he inexplicably is able to fight despite his hippie nature. I would picture someone like him to refuse to go through with fighting lessons. That any fighting lessons would be forced upon him by his militaristic culture. He even uses a ladder against them. He can also spin dash, somehow. I'm torn between, well that's cool and useful, and that's very stupid. He doesn't have super speed, how can he do this? It's like Antoine spin dash in the reboot. I haven't read that yet, but I've heard about it. I like how he used a tool on the ground. He also grabbed a tongue and let go to knock the guy back. This causes them all to run away and jump into a hole. And Knuckles covers the hole with a boulder that conveniently happened to be right there for him to use. I guess off screen he got the boulder all the way here because he knew he would need it. And then the hippie justifies that he'll fight for a righteous cause after this was lampshaded. And the story ends with him saying that he'd rather get his own house. But God forbid we actually see him do that. It's like, I hope I never see him again because his design sucked, and he's annoying. First, he decides to annoy the heroes, and then he decides he'd rather get his own house. Like, he realizes that he's annoying them and he shouldn't do that. Huh? Who is he? Well, this episode was certainly less embarrassing than the last time Flynn wrote a story for Boom. It doesn't seem like bad fanfiction this time. I love that the Froglobites were used again, because they were begging for another episode. It was weird that it took so long. But I still have to seriously wonder how there was a convenient little hole for the hippie to escape the Froglobites with that none of them noticed. So as usual with Flynn, the entire plot was forced. And the action scene at the end was satisfying because Og got to fight them all off in ways that were actually interesting to watch. But that can't make me forgive him for annoying all of the heroes. Why is he such an idiot? I see Flynn hasn't stopped using those idiot balls. This is easily the weakest part of the episode. He's a guest in their home. He's lucky he's being allowed to stay with them at all. He would have been on his best behavior, not done all the obvious things to annoy them. I refuse to believe that a peaceful hippie like him would keep on making noise right beside Sonic when he clearly told him to stop and was trying to sleep. He obviously has no social skills at all because he was stupid enough to question his military commander to his face and told Tails off for liking technology, when that's clearly his thing, and tricked Knuckles into wasting his time waiting at a tree. Wait, that's another idiot ball. Not only is it stupid that he didn't just climb up the tree, which he could do with any narrow tree he wanted in the Chow Gardens, which I'm pretty sure were based off coconut trees, but it's impossible to believe that he'd do literally nothing but wait at the tree for hours. He would have taken off, and Ogg would have told him to, not been a jerk. Why didn't he just tell Tails he wanted coconuts? Tails would have flown up to them no problem if he wanted them for free that badly. I don't know how I ever tolerated stupid humor. Idiots aren't funny, they're annoying. We have too many of them as it is. And the worst thing about them is they're confusing as hell. At least he tried to redeem the character by having him fight, but at that point I was still resentful of him. That being said, this was a surprisingly good and harmless episode by Flynn and Boom standards. The idiot balls are all constrained to one character to be less confusing, and it's not full of out-of-character moments either, aside from Sonic being a dick to Tails. Episode 34-2, knine-to-five Knuckles. We start out seeing someone scratching a record with music playing, and Comedy Chimp looks bored and exhausted afterwards. I guess the joke is supposed to be that the reason he hates this music is because he's old and it's young, hip music. But this kind of music has existed for way too long, I think decades. Wouldn't even a 30-year-old have grown up used to rap music in the 2010s? How old is this comedian? So combine this with the artist's obsession with having old-fashioned TVs in the show, and how out of date is this show when it's trying to appeal to kids? But I do relate to him here about the music, which I guess one of his bosses forced him to put up with, because it's his show. He groans and lies that the music was great, and he's ironically honest for an entertainer, saying that it was all just noise to him. Would it really be realistic that he'd be honest with his audience? Then he tells his audience to look for a cheaper prize than big TVs, and Knuckles finds a lamp. He says that he guesses the rest of the prize budget went to his ex-wife's lawyer. That really made me smile, and that was the best joke he ever had, but he wasn't trying to make a joke this time. Then out of nowhere, Barker happens to be right next to Knuckles at night when he's inexplicably alone, because he tells him he's an unlicensed real estate agent that can show him a new house. Why would he tell him he's unlicensed? If he's unlicensed, then if he sells someone a house, obviously the government wouldn't recognize them as owning the property. So because of a forced idiot ball, Knuckles buys a house with a hole in the roof, and doesn't tell Tails to seal it up. I think he uses credit because he somehow has no actual money, despite being a hero, who you'd think would be paid for his heroism by the government. But instead he's so poor he expects him to use garbage as currency. He sends his friend to distress signal because his lamp isn't working, because he didn't pay the electric bill. And he asks how he's supposed to pay bills. So I'm guessing he lives with Sonic all the time, and that's why paying bills is new to him. So after he's rejected as a librarian because he challenges his pronunciation of librarian somehow, when he's not Antoine, he can't put groceries in a bag because he crushes the egg. I'm impressed with him for admitting that he made a mistake. How did he get hired as a grocer without a resume or qualifications? But somehow, the female photographer who was amazed with him in an earlier episode is amazed by him here and hires him for an agency. This is very forced. I wish jobs were this easy to get in real life. How stupid do they think we are? This is such misinformation. She hires him as a new creative executive. She's told off for it by a guy with the voice of a bad stereotype. She somehow makes an excuse for him when he's eating chicken fingers, as I seriously wonder how he got hired with no qualifications and experience. And how is creative executive a 9-to-5 desk job? Would that really have that exact working time? He's told excellent job delegating work to the guy with a bad voice. And then when Knuckles comes home, Barker asks him where his money is. I would expect a creative executive job to pay a lot more than that. And he threatens to foreclose his house. I love that he's being a competent villain again, and this time he's not completely stupid about it. It's just that I always expected him to stay a circus ringleader, but it makes sense since he lost his workers. If there was always a job opening near Dave, why didn't he fill it a long time ago? How is Knuckles keeping his creative executive job when he's just drawing little kid pictures? And he's sad that he can't keep fighting robots with the heroes. Why doesn't he just tell Sonic about his Barker predicament? I love that Styx tells Knuckles that he looks awful, like he's been run over by the ugly truck, and that the guy who drives the ugly truck should lose his license. He really deserves this considering his bad redesign, though I don't even remember him looking more awful than usual. Then the female photographer is happy that Knuckles will be able to convince people to buy stuff they don't need thanks to his work. It was sadly way too vague for me to tell what he's been doing, making all of it pointless. Knuckles fights more robots, but then makes an excuse to go back to Dave and somehow immediately goes back to his uniform by moving off screen. He's not Sonic. He's then caught between jobs and can't take someone's order because he has to save Amy from a robot's grip, because she was somehow worthless enough to get grabbed when she has a hammer. But she's always killing robots in one hit. This wouldn't happen. She's not Elise. The woman asks him why he's mopping, and comes up with a stupid excuse for why that no one would ever come up with. When you'd think he would have told her that he has 2 jobs, why did he lie to her? The fries are ready, and he has to put them on a tray, and then he gets confused and offers Eggman fries, calling him sir, when he should know he's not the one who ordered them. Well, they were surprisingly sweet. This distracts Eggman, who asks for ketchup, and Sonic knocks him away with a spin dash, which gives him what he deserves for complaining about a gift. Knuckles somehow gets fired because he knocked something over? I don't understand. He was fighting robots. Obviously he had an excuse. The woman who really wanted him fired him that easily? Then after it's lampshaded that Knuckles didn't tell his friends about Barker, but the plot was written anyways because the writer sucks, Amy reads the contract. She tells Barker that people think she's the cute and adorable and sweet one. Nobody fucking thinks that! What the hell kind of fan actually thinks of her that way? Every fan thinks of her as the violent, hammer-wielding, sassy one. Remember A Date to Forget? How delusional, sexist, and out of touch is this writer that he thinks people don't think of Amy as anything but the cute girly girl character. Talk about detached from the fan base. And people think the show is in touch with the fans? Then why is this acting like Amy being threatening is a brand new plot twist? And why the hell did Amy have to stand up for Knuckles while Knuckles was a coward to a guy half his size? Logically, Knuckles would have just beaten them all up with a super strength from the start. Amy hasn't been the sweet one since Essay 1. She threatens him, saying that she has a hammer and she crushes her enemies and eats them for breakfast. It would have been actually awesome if she actually attacked with her hammer. But now, of all time, she just sticks to harmless threats. She then goes on too long about how she eats her enemies for breakfast, even though everyone knows she's not a cannibal. The threat would have worked if she just left it at that. Somehow, her stupid friends hold her back instead of just letting her beat up a villain. I hate self-righteousness like that. So Barker runs away from her after that awesome moment that could have been way cooler if she actually used her hammer. But instead she was completely out of character. She runs after Sonic with a hammer all the time in the games, but not this guy. And Knuckles somehow says that he likes being a nomad anyways. I refuse to believe he was a nomad. I thought he was living with one of his friends. Well, to be fair, there's no winter on a tropical island. And if it rains, he could always stay with his friends anyways. But still, this revelation came out of nowhere. This is Boom Knuckles. He doesn't live on Angel Island, so he has no reason to be outside all day because he isn't guarding an emerald. So why would I assume he still lived outside? They changed everything else about his character, but he still lives outside? There was an episode where he said that he doesn't know how to survive in the wild. Like, he loves nature, but that doesn't mean he knows how to survive in it. But then how is he a nomad? Wow, this episode sucked. I was interested in its concept from the name alone, even if I was sure it was just going to be another episode where Knuckles was unbelievably incompetent. But sadly, it didn't even live up to the potential I thought it'd settle for. Once he finds some jobs, he's not incompetent at all, which made sense for Dave's job, but not for the creative executive job, which was way too fucking vague about what he was doing, and thus wasted an interesting premise on us. Like, I feel like if this happened in Seinfeld or something, we learned what the job was about. So the plot was unfocused because it was split between him doing two different jobs. First off, there's no way Knuckles would outright buy a house for his new lamp instead of simply putting it in one of his friends' houses, which I'm sure he already got into the habit of doing with his possessions. And there's no way anyone would trust the same guy who forced him and his friends to work in a circus after imprisoning them. He knows this is a bad guy, and instead of simply beating him up like the Knuckles I know, he agrees to buy a house from a guy who somehow admits that he's an unlicensed real estate agent. How is there even an empty house for him to sell on an island with a town that small? I guess he murdered the people in the house to make it vacant. And that fight caused the hole in the roof, since logically the former occupant would have it fixed otherwise. And if the writer thought to have a character ask Knuckles why he didn't tell his friends about Barker threatening him, he shouldn't have written this plot if he knew how forced and bullshit it was. Why would you write a plot when you know about the giant plot hole and still don't want to fill it? Him having a non-disclosure agreement doesn't justify it. Why would he be so cowardly as to respect the agreement of a villain instead of just violently threatening him? He wouldn't be intimidated by this tiny, scrawny guy. No, instead Amy has to do it, but without holding her hammer. When seeing her beat them up would have actually been awesome. I'm already used to Amy being sassy and threatening people. It's actually rare for her to threaten her enemies instead of her friends. Why the hell is the writer making her talk as if everyone thinks she's just the cute, girly one, when that stopped being the case by Sonic Heroes? This is the same girl who said, "Sonic, this time there's no way to marry me." Why would this woman even hire Knuckles to be a creative executive in the first place when he didn't give her a resume and had no experience? She would have been fired for that kind of hire at worst. And somehow, instead of the obvious thing happening, where he does a bad job and gets fired, instead he only gets fired because of a really minor, completely forgettable mistake he made when he was under attack by robots, so Dave really should understand. He knocked something over? So? This was the same woman who hired him way too easily and made excuses to keep him around, which would have been justified if she had a huge crush on him. He could have just quit his jobs like Sonic told him to. That would have made more sense. That would have been foreshadowed, but no. The guy who hated Knuckles getting him fired himself would have made sense because it would have been foreshadowed, but no. Every little thing is disappointing in this episode. It was nice to see Knuckles give Eggman some fries and call him Sir for a change, but we never get a chance to see Eggman eat them. He just immediately gets knocked away in the Eggmobile by Sonic's spin dash, leaving me to assume all the fries fell on the ground and got dirty anyways. Then what's the point of having him give him food if he won't get to eat it? Just for a weak joke? Logically, what would have happened is that he'd accept the fries and then put up the glass dome on his Eggmobile that's been a staple of it since Sonic 1. Not to mention he'd fly his Eggmobile high enough in the sky that Sonic would never be able to simply spin dash jump at it. There's nothing stopping him from doing that, so why does he ever give him the chance? This was a frustrating episode with wasted potential. It's like I expected a story when it got that creative executive job, and I didn't get a story. Nothing happened. If Dave is only firing him too easily because he's the villain in the Lightning Bolt Society and would take any excuse, then he would have hired him in the first place. And of course, it's forced that he even had a job available for Knuckles because we've never seen anyone assist Dave in his job before. So where'd that job position come from? And why did Knuckles get replaced after this episode? He just gave up on the job position? He somehow did a perfect job with both jobs all episode, and yet he gets fired because of one mistake. Even them going the predictable route would have made more sense. Why would they have an episode about a hero needing to get a job, And that explained why all of the other heroes don't have to have jobs. And instead of the story ending with Knuckles even getting to keep his new house for a happy ending that was foreshadowed properly, he just gets a sleeping bag in Tails' workshop. Then why wasn't this always the case? Wasn't this obvious? But why did Barker even get to approach Knuckles alone in the first place when he was just with his friends? Logically, Sonic would have still been with them instead of going on without him, and it would have prevented this entire plot. I was willing to give this plot a chance, but it sucked even at what I thought it was going to settle with.